Ready to begin. Welcome, everybody, to the annual service of the Namaqua Unitarian Universalist Congregation and the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greeley. I'm Reverend Aaron Norris of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greeley, and I am happy to be the co-celebrant of this service today with my dear colleague, Reverend Laurel Leifert. I hope so much that today we share a moment that inspires our spirits and heals our souls.
And I add to Aaron's welcome. I see mostly Namaqua folks, but I'm really happy that some of you from Greeley were brave enough to join us on our Zoom platform. We've been doing these virtual services for a couple of months now, as have you, and it's certainly not perfect yet. But one of the things is that all of you will remain muted because of the quality of sound until possibly joys and sorrows you may want to share. And then at the end, we're hoping that people will stay for our virtual coffee hour. I'll be explaining some of the things like the chat button down at the bottom of your screen when you'll have a chance, if you don't want to speak during joys and sorrows, to put your message in the chat room. And also when we do our offertory, that will be another chance for you to click on that chat button down at the bottom of your screen. So I am so happy that we are continuing this tradition, but this is the strangest version of it that we've ever had. And it's because we're in a very strange time. So in years past, we've gathered at a park, either in Greeley or here in Loveland. And really the primary focus of our time together has been brunch and conversation. So today we will have a virtual coffee hour, but you'll find that it's a little bit more of a substantive service instead of just singing and telling stories. And so let us begin with something that I think is an indication of the times that we are in. Some of you may be familiar with what's known as the Black National Anthem, which was first written as a poem by the NAACP leader, James Weldon Johnson. And then his brother, John Rosamond Johnson, set it to music way back in 1899. So more than a century ago, Lift Every Voice and Sing was composed. And I think it was in 1919 that it was adopted as the Black National Anthem. But what's interesting is that it is now resurging again. There's been a kind of renaissance, which during the civil rights era, it used to be one of the favorite songs sung along with We Shall Overcome. But now most recently, in some of the demonstrations that have followed the tragic murder of George Floyd, people of all races have been singing it in the streets. And so this morning, I would like to begin by playing Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Let our
Powerful song. And now we begin with our UU tradition of lighting our chalice. And this morning we'll first have Aaron light the chalice representing the Greeley congregation, and then I will light one for Namaqua.
I light our chalice with the words of Marjorie Montgomery. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift.
Jesse. Yeah.
I light our chalice with the words of the renowned white theologian, musician, and physician, Albert Schweitzer, who founded a hospital in French Equatorial Africa. And in 1952, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his philosophy of reverence for life. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Come, let us worship together. And both congregations begin services with the congregational affirmation, which will appear on your screen in just a moment. And we've modified one of the lines, which is instead of saying service its law, we say service its call. So in a moment, please join me. Love is the spirit of this church and service its call. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now for our opening song, one of our favorites, Spirit of Life, that is sung at All Souls Church in Unitarian. And please sing along.
Still getting used to this. So, my understanding, we're going to do Time for All Ages, and my understanding is that the Namaqua folks have recently read this story in Time for All Ages, but there's a reason that folk stories are told and retold. They have a timeless wisdom that reminds us over and over again something that we need to remind ourselves. And I hope that everyone will enjoy this particular retelling. It Could Always Be Worse by Marco Zemek. Once upon a time, in a small village, a poor, unfortunate man lived with his mother, his wife, and his 6 children in a little one-room hut. Because they were so crowded, the man and his wife often argued. The children were noisy, and they fought. In winter, when the nights were long and the days were cold, life was especially hard. The hut was full of crying and quarreling, and one day, when the poor, unfortunate man couldn't stand it any more, he ran to the rabbi for advice. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "things are in a bad way with me and getting worse. We are so poor that my mother, my wife, my 6 children, and I live together in a one-room small hut. We are too crowded and there is too much noise. Help me, Rabbi. Help me, Rabbi. I shall do whatever you say." The rabbi thought and pulled his beard, and at last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, do you have any animals? Perhaps a chicken or 2? "Yes," said the man, "I do have a few chickens, and also a rooster and a goose." "Ah, fine," said the rabbi. "Go home and take the chickens and the rooster and the goose into your home to live with you." "Yes, indeed, Rabbi," said the man, who was a bit surprised. And so the poor unfortunate man hurried home, took the chickens and the rooster and the goose out of the shed and into his little hut. When some days or weeks had gone by, life in the hut was worse than before. Now the quarreling and the crying was accompanied by honking and crowing and clucking. There were feathers in the soup. The hut stayed just as small. The children grew bigger. When the poor, unfortunate man couldn't stand it any longer, he ran to the rabbi for help. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "see what misfortune has befallen me. Now, with the crying and the quarreling, with the honking and the clucking and the crowing, there are feathers in the soup. Rabbi, it couldn't be worse. Please help me." And the rabbi listened and thought and said at last, "Tell me, do you happen to have a goat?" "Oh, yes, I do have an old goat, but he's not worth much." "Excellent," said the rabbi. "Now, go home and take the old goat into your hut to live with you." "Ah, no, do you really mean it, Rabbi?" cried the man. "Come now, my good man, and do as I say at once," said the rabbi. And so the poor, unfortunate man tromped back, with his head hanging down, and took the old goat to his hut. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the little hut was much worse. Now, with the crying, quarreling, clucking, honking, and crowing, the goat went wild, pushing and butting everyone with his horns. The hut seemed smaller. The children grew bigger. When the poor, unfortunate man couldn't stand it another minute, he ran again to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi, help me," he screamed. "Now the goat is running wild. My life is a nightmare." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, is it possible that you have a cow? Young or old, doesn't matter." "Yes, Rabbi, I have a cow," said the poor man fearfully. "Go then," said the rabbi, "and take the cow into your hut." "Oh, no, surely not, Rabbi," cried the man. Do it at once, said the rabbi. Poor unfortunate man trudged home with a heavy heart, took the cow into his hut. Is the rabbi crazy? He thought. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the hut was very much worse than before. Everyone quarreled, even the chickens. The goat ran wild, the cow trampled everything. The poor man could hardly believe his misfortune. At last, when he could stand it no longer, he ran to the rabbi for help. Holy Rabbi, he shrieked, help me, save me. The end of the world has come. The cow is trampling everything. There is no room even to breathe. It's worse than a nightmare. The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, go home now, my poor unfortunate man, and let the animals out of your hut. I will right away. And the poor unfortunate man hurried home and let the cow, the goat, the chickens, the goose, and the rooster out of his little hut. That night, the poor man and his family slept peacefully. There was no crowing, no clucking, no honking. There was plenty of room to breathe. The next day, the poor man ran back to the rabbi. Holy Rabbi, he cried, you have made life sweet for me. With just my family in the hut, it's so quiet, so roomy, so peaceful. What a pleasure.
Bravo. So isn't that so cool how he did that? I'm wondering if anybody at Namaqua would be willing to do something like that for our time for all ages. So when I first saw that, I wrote to Aaron and I said, wow, that is so cool. So we are going to be doing this for a little while, folks, having virtual services. So I'm inviting anyone who has the courage to take on a new task of technology. We too could have a delightful time for all ages like Aaron just put together. So thank you, Aaron. And now we come to our joys and sorrows. When we have a coming together of two congregations, today we're going to adopt our tradition here at Namaqua. I understand that Aaron lights candles, and what we do, a long-standing tradition, is that we transfer for each joy and sorrow a pebble from this bowl into this one that is a beautiful sky blue. And so the way that we'll do this is that I will introduce a couple of joys and then invite you to either raise your hand or maybe just unmute your microphone. The way that you do that is you hover down at the bottom of your screen, and on the left side is a microphone, and if you want to unmute it, you just click on that and then you'll be able to speak. And so let me begin by saying a joy, which is that every month in our newsletter we have someone who we lift up, or actually we don't do it every month anymore. If we have a special person who's done an extraordinary amount of work for our congregation, we call them the Namaqua Star. And so for July, our Namaqua Star is Sarah Suriani, who is actually our Zoomer today. And thank goodness for Sarah Suriani. Over the years, she has done an incredible amount. So Sarah, can you hear all that wild applause for all that you have done for us? A big thank you.
Well, thank you, but I couldn't do it with a big team of folks here at Namaqua, so it wasn't me alone.
Yes, and so you're humble on top of all of your other fine qualities. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, Cherry Sokolowski asked me to make sure that those of you at Namaqua who know Sid Cottrell knows that she is moving, maybe even as soon as this Tuesday, to Cedar Falls, Iowa, where she has a lot of cousins and other family. And so she's looking forward to that, but it's kind of a joy and a sorrow because she has been a meaningful part of Namaqua, and we've been a very meaningful part of her life for a number of years now. So since she'll be taking off soon, if any of you want to say farewell to her, please do it soon. And so now I'll open it up, and joys can be birthdays, anniversaries, or anything in your personal life that brings you joy, so we can celebrate with you. And then if you have a sorrow or a concern, please share that with us. And this would be a personal sorrow or concern, and we will give you comfort. And so please raise your hand. And since we have a lot of people here now, if any of you see someone who's raised their hand, let me know. I see Mim Neal. Mim, you can unmute.
Thank you. On Wednesday, Carol Cook is having surgery, and she's got, it's almost a hobby with her. She's just always having something to repair her, and I just hope that it goes well. And she zooms back, and Brenda Christensen is still sick, and there's a chance that she will see an infection specialist next week, and possibly get some guidance to returning to health, for which I really, really pray. Thank you.
So here's a stone for Carol Koch and for Brenda Christensen. Thank you, Mim.
Hi there.
Speak.
It's Pedro. Yeah, I just want to have a sorrow here. I'm looking for work again. I was working for the city, but they're letting people go there now, and so I'm gonna have to scramble for work yet again for like the third time this year.
Oh boy.
Anyway, any positive energy is greatly appreciated.
Good luck, Pedro.
Thank you.
We're with you. Kent Robertson. You're mute still, Kent. So you know down at the bottom left, you can click on that microphone, Kent, to unmute yourself. Well, Kent, let's go on to someone else while you work that out. I think I saw some more hands, Francie.
I am greatly concerned about the young man that we bonded out on just last week. July 1st, he arrived home in Colorado, and within hours, the local police had pulled his car over that he was driving and took his ID and went to their system and arrested him because the warrant for his arrest hadn't shown up at court while he was incarcerated in Colorado. So they took him to jail. Luckily, he had a hearing as he was supposed to. The judge said, okay, we understand this. You're free to go. We'll resolve your case later. And he walked outside, and in the parking lot was ICE. And they picked him up and took him straight to the Adelanto prison in California, which is where he is now, hoping to get a hearing sooner rather than later, because we've already paid $20,000 for his bond.
Yeah.
So prayers for Eric.
Thank you, Francie, and thank you for the work of the Immigrant Freedom Fund. I think I saw some Greeley folks raise their hand. I can't see you, but if anybody would like to share, please unmute your microphone and speak. All right.
I have a concern.
Okay.
Janet, I have a concern. My cat Diego had to go to emergency. And you know I'm unemployed. I've applied for 70 jobs so far, Pedro. And so I had to pay, I had to charge over $1,600 for my cat emergency. It turns out he has pancreatitis. which I hope, I mean, it's not curable, but he's on 3 medications to help him feel better. And I'm just hoping that it turns out okay, because my daughter's cat was first diagnosed with pancreatitis, and then they said it was pancreatic cancer, and she died. So of course I am very concerned about my little Diego. He's my companion, you know. So any thoughts that can go out for that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Janet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Kent?
Okay. Yeah, I went to the pharmacy and picked up a prescription for my wife, and I didn't know what that was, and I took it, and it said that the doctor had examined her, and she had mild Alzheimer's, and so that they were going to treat her with the prescription. And that's a negative side. The positive side is that I got a statement that the one person who's a patient can meet with one person who's outside without worrying about just being close to one another, because I had not seen in person my wife for about 4 weeks, but I could talk to her on the telephone. But now we get to sign up one at a time and make an appointment. And I'm looking forward to being able to say hello to Jenny and give her a hug and be person with 1 hour of freedom there. So that's one thing coming up. Thank you.
And Kent, tell her hello for us too. Give her our love.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I have a couple for my congregation, and I apologize if you're on and you were going to offer it, but I wanted to make sure that I lifted up your concerns as well. One is Charlene has asked that we drop a stone for her and her daughter Kim and their dog Tess. Tess is getting to a point that it appears as though she will have to be put down sometime very, very soon. So she asks for positive energy and thoughts and prayers. And also, Julie Miller has asked us to place a stone for a member of her family who's dealing with a serious illness and a dear friend who has suffered a traumatic loss. So that would be 2 stones. And well, all of us are concerned for those who have suffered some pretty serious economic losses recently.
Indeed. I'll put in a few more stones to represent those of you who are here today and maybe feel too shy or it's too tender to speak out loud. And also for those in our community who aren't with us today. And what we do at Namaqua is we always have 2 candles that we light to represent the joys and sorrows beyond what now is our virtual walls. So this is the way that we can weave the tapestry of love we call community, is by sharing our joys and sorrows. I understand that usually Aaron does a pastoral prayer, and our form of prayer is in song. And so please enjoy or sing along, Comfort Me. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Dance with me, dance with me, dance with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
The theme for the Greeley congregation this month is bounty. And in July and August, Namaqua has no designated theme from Soul Matters Sharing Circle. And so today I've chosen hope as the theme for my part of the service. And so what's coming next is a weaving together of some quotes for each of our themes. And I'll begin with one from Langston Hughes, who was an African-American writer and best known as a leader of the Harlem Renaissance. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly.
Vandava Shiva is an Indian scholar, environmental activist, food sovereignty advocate, and author. And she wrote, "It is time to learn from mistakes of monocultures, of the mind and violence of reductionist thinking. It is time to turn to diversity for thinking. Diversity creates harmony, and harmony creates beauty, balance, bounty, and peace in nature and society, in agriculture and culture, in science and in politics."
Reinhold Niebuhr was a white American Protestant theologian who served as a professor at the Union Theological Seminary in New York City. The historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr. described Niebuhr as the most influential American theologian of the 20th century. And this is what he wrote. "Nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone, and therefore we are saved by love."
Samuel Johnson, the Englishman who created the Dictionary of the English Language, wrote of bounty, "Bounty always receives part of its value from the manner in which it is bestowed."
Barbara Kingsolver is a white American author whose work often focuses on social justice, biodiversity, and the interaction between humans and their communities and environments. In her novel, American Dreams, she wrote, "The very least you can do in your life is figure out what you hope for. And the most you can do is live inside that hope. Not admire it from a distance, but live right in it, under its roof."
Simone de Beauvoir, the French writer, existential philosopher, and social theorist, she said, "What I consider true generosity, you give your all, and yet you always feel it costs you nothing."
Reverend Sean Dennison is a white transgender man, a writer, artist, and UU minister who currently serves the Rogue Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Ashland, Oregon. The danger of hopelessness is that we can lose each other. In times of hopelessness, it's easy to get scared of everything and everyone. It's easy to start believing that your neighbor is the problem and that hoarding is a better strategy than generosity. The problem is that when community starts to break down, we lose the most important source of hope we have, each other.
Seneca the Younger was a Roman Stoic philosopher and a playwright who observed even the bounty of nature is too little for the greedy person.
Rebecca Solnit is a prolific white American author and activist who has written about the environment, politics, and women's rights, especially violence against women. She wrote, "I still value hope, but I see it as only part of what's required, a starting point. Think of it as the match, but not the tinder or the blaze. To matter, to change the world, you also need devotion and will, and you need to act. Hope is only where it begins."
John Wesley, the English theologian and founder of Methodism, said, "Do all you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as you ever can."
And finally, John Lennon, a white English singer, songwriter, and peace activist, who some of you may know was associated with a rock band from England called the Beatles. In his moving ballad called Imagine, some of the lyrics are this: "You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one." Our offering today has a special guest. Greeley folks, you may know that we split half of our offering each quarter with a local nonprofit who embodies our values. And we now in July begin a new quarter. And so we have invited to join us today the executive director of our half plate recipient, Neighbor to Neighbor. And so during this time, and I think Aaron was interested in exploring this possibility for Greeley, what will happen is in your chat room, there will be a button that you can donate. And so if you hover your cursor down at the bottom, you can see a list in the middle of the screen of security participants and then chat. And so if you'd like to donate, you click on the chat button and then click on the donate. And what we've agreed to today is that we will split our offering between the Greeley congregation and Namaqua, and then half of our half will begin our donations to Neighbor. And so Kelly, are you on? And if so, could you please unmute your microphone and tell us a little bit about your organization? And we will then invite you back in September and virtually present you with, I hope, a hefty check. And you can then describe to us in more detail what you plan to use the money for. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for giving me a couple of minutes of your morning. Really honored to be a part of your group this morning. Just wanted to share 1 to 2 minutes of what Neighbor to Neighbor is in case you aren't familiar. We are a nonprofit that has had an office in Loveland for between 20 and 25 years. And we've been in Larimer County with an office in Fort Collins for 50 years this year. So it's a big year and a year none of us will forget anytime soon, right? So our focus is housing stability. And everything we do focuses on housing stability, from supporting people experiencing homelessness so that they can exit homelessness into a stable home. We have a portfolio of affordable properties. We own and operate the Willows senior housing community near the library. And then we also do a lot in terms of home ownership education. So we really have the whole spectrum of housing stability, so that we believe when people have opportunity and access to a stable home, they are much better equipped to meet their full potential and their goals and stabilize in the areas of health, relationships, academics, employment, all of the good things we all want in our lives. So right now, as you might imagine, we are very busy because eviction prevention is our largest program always. And right now that service has increased 700% as folks who have never had to rely on a supportive hand are requiring a supportive hand right now as they suddenly lost income a few months ago. So in Loveland, we typically distribute about $7,500 every month to Loveland residents. And then in the last 3 months, we've been above 30,000 each of those months, just in Loveland. So services are up. Services for Spanish speakers are way up. So we've been really glad to be able to hire a couple of bilingual staff to help in that area. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions later. If any of you would like to reach out, our website is in2in.org. And thank you very much for your service and your kind hearts in our community.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for all that you do. And does anybody have questions about that donate button? And you get to select what fund, and so it would be the top one. It would be the pledge and operating, or the operating fund. So thank you for your generosity. And now please enjoy this very, very special song that I just discovered.
I come to sing a song about hope. I'm not inspired much right now, but even so, I came out here to sing a song, so here I go. I guess I think that if I tinker long enough, one might appear. And look, it's here. One verse is done. The work's begun. I've come to sing a song about hope. In spite of everything ridiculous and sad, though I'm beyond belief depressed, confused and mad, I got dressed. I underestimated how much that would take. I didn't break until right now. I sing of hope and don't know how. So maybe I should substitute strength, because I'm strong enough. I got lots of things I didn't think I could, and so did you. I know that's true. And so I sing a song about hope. Though I can't guarantee there's something real behind it, I have to try to show my children I can find it. And so today, when life seems crazy and impossible to bear, it must be there fear never wins. I sing of hope. See, I said hope. The work begins.
I really found that song so moving when I just heard it about a week ago. The song was written by Jason Robert Brown. He's the one who was playing the piano. He's a white American musical composer, and he recorded it in 2018 in his album called How We React and How We Recover. And then the singer was Natasha Yvette Williams. So she's an African-American Broadway star whose Broadway debut was in the original production of The Color Purple. And so that song was recorded in 2018 at a concert. And then just a few weeks ago, it was released in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. So what a time we are living in. I don't need to list all the worries that we're living with right now because I know you know them. And if you're like me, hope is kind of hard to find these days. And yet I know that we need hope. We need hope to survive, to give us the energy and the will every morning to get up and put one foot in front of the other. And I agree with Sean Dennison that hopelessness is actually dangerous. When we're hopeless, we can lose our connections with each other. We get scared. And in this complicated, divided time that we are living in, we can start believing that our neighbor is the problem. My friends, the problem is that when community starts to break down, we lose the most important source of hope that we have, each other. These days, I often turn to a quote from Howard Zinn, a white American historian known for his groundbreaking book that I recommend to everyone, which is called A People's History of the United States. It will open your eyes. Zinn has some credibility as a historian, and he wrote that to be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. If we act in however small a way, if we live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, this in itself is a marvelous victory. So to help me do this, I often remember the words of Forrest Church. He was a UU minister who died of cancer. And I believe that this is the kind of simplicity on the other side of complexity. He says, do what you can, be who you are, and love what you have. Do what you can, be who you are, and love what you have. So I believe that this is a time when, even though hope is hard to find, we are called to work to keep hope alive in ourselves, and to help keep hope alive in others. So I think what we are doing here in our UU congregations, like in Greeley and here in Loveland, yesterday and today and tomorrow, is working together to create beloved community, which is a lofty and inspiring goal to be the change that we want to see in the world. But I think that each of us in our own small circles of influence have the power to create that change. So we're called to be aware and intentional of how we spend our time, how we spend our money, how we create and maintain meaningful connections with one another. And then imagine that rippling out to the rest of the world. And so I want to close with the lyrics to a song that we often sing together. It's called Come Sing a Song With Me. And I'll give you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll sing a song of love and a rose in the winter time. And I've brought one today for you in the summertime. And now to Aaron.
Thank you, Laurel. First, I want to say how great it is that we are all together as two congregations in spite of the circumstances. And I think that it is an impressive thing that we have managed to keep this tradition going despite a global pandemic, despite technical hiccups. And the remarkable thing is that both of our communities are gathered together, celebrating hope and bounty. As I told my congregation last week, it's a very unusual message to talk about bounty at a moment like this because we are feeling diminishment. A feeling that things may have in fact gone off the rails, and how dare we talk about bounty at a time like this? Laurel didn't want to list some of the things that went on, and I think that's a wise thing. I'm not always a wise person, so I will list a couple of things. The UN estimates that more than 500,000 people have already died of the disease this year. And in this country, as of yesterday, more than 3.29 million people have fallen ill. At the end of today, it is likely that we will confirm that there are 60,000 more people that have fallen ill just in the United States. So how dare we talk about bounty at a time like this? On top of this, like the great millstone around our collective neck, is the scourge of white supremacy. And nearly every day, like a drip, 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 we learn of new incidents of racism, until it feels like we might drown in a sea of systematic oppression. And how dare we talk about bounty at a time like this? And everywhere we look, leadership seems to fluctuate between general incompetence and outright brazen corruption, backed by ignorance and appealing to some of the worst of our natures, leveraging power on those who can suffer it the least. And I ask again, how do we dare talk about bounty at a time like this? My answer is very simple. We talk about bounty because we have hope. As Reverend Laurel has already preached to the idea of hope, I just want to add a little. I want to tie the ideas here together a bit. Our congregation talked last week about a couple of characteristics about bounty as a theological concept, about how it is similar to fruitfulness. And in an agricultural sense of bounty, one often expects bounty in a future time, when the work is done and the fields, with the help of nature, return many times over what we might otherwise have expected. This is one idea of bounty, and I think this too is an idea of the expectation of hope, that these things are more than simply luck. They require effort. The arc of the moral universe may bend toward justice, yes, as Theodore Parker observed, as Martin Luther King Jr. observed. But that bent arc only cuts through the unjust world when we yoke ourselves to the work, when we bust up the dried soil of our history and we replant. And the arc of the scythe may have a curving bend toward justice, but it only reaps the fruits that we have sown. I am a Unitarian Universalist, and my faith comes from many different sources in the living tradition. And sometimes I learn from folk wisdom that as bad as things are, they could be worse. And sometimes those sources are still more unusual. Sometimes it is nature itself that is the source of my lesson. And in this very unusual time, the lessons I keep learning at this moment are from the virus. There is a 14-day window that I have discovered I am living in at this moment. As rapidly as I begin to feel the world change, or that it could change, I find that I am always subject to the person that I was 2 weeks ago. We are now faced with this reality. We believe that we can change the world today, that the different world, the better world, the bountiful world is possible. But the virus says this is not true for tomorrow. You are always captive to your history. The image behind me is of the Sankofa bird. She is another lesson that I learned this week. A symbol of the Twi people of Ghana of West Africa, the Sankofa bird reminds people that while they are moving forward, they must also relate to their past. And the bird you can see is moving forward, but looking backward. The Sankofa in the Twi language means to go back and get it. In some ways, this is the symbol of hope for the future, but it is a reminder that we cannot leave our past behind simply by escaping it. Wherever we are today, wrestling with the virus, it is because of the choices that we made 10 to 14 days ago. And if tomorrow we have lower numbers of progress, it is not because of something we did today. It is because of something we put into motion weeks ago. We are simply the children of our past selves. If we want to struggle with systematic oppression, we have to do it because of choices that we made decades ago. And if we hope for bounty in the future, we must plant today, expecting not to harvest tomorrow, but to reap what is sown in tomorrow's future. May we reap that bounty from our humble efforts now in our time of need. And I believe we have a closing song.
Sorry. Here we go. Melanie DeBorn.
Don't leave your sister hanging.
One foot from the other, and we will love. One foot from the other, and we will love. One foot from the other, and we will
So that is Melanie DeMore. Someone called her Woman Power Wrapped in Velvet. So she is from the Bay Area. I met her in Portland, Oregon a couple years ago at a UU Musicians Conference. Those of you at Namaqua have heard us do that song. And I think it was a year or two ago, I did it when I was the MC at something called the Rockin' Grannies Rally. So I hope you enjoyed that. She was singing with a group from Iowa called Village Fire. So now let us end the formal part of our service by extinguishing our chalice. So Aaron.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And I too will extinguish our chalice. And blow out our candles of joys and concerns. And for a benediction, don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't you give up. Keep moving on. And as always, we do as our closing circle, the essence of Unitarian Universalism in one song. And so just imagine that we're creating a circle, holding hands with one another. And please enjoy, and if you like, sing along with the UU Blessing song. It's a blessing you were born.
It's a blessing I was born.
And it matters what you do.
And it matters what I do.
What you know about God.
What I know about God.
Is a piece of the truth.
Is a piece of the truth.
Let the beauty you love.
Let the beauty I love.
Be what you do.
Be what I do.
And you don't have to do it alone.
And I don't have to do it alone.
It's a blessing we were born.
It's a blessing we were born.
And it matters what we do.
And it matters what we do.
What we know about God.
What we know about God.
Is a piece of the truth.
Is a piece of the truth.
Let the beauty we love.
Let the beauty we love.
Be what we do.
Be what we do.
And we don't have to do it alone.
And we don't have to do it alone.
We don't have to do it alone.
We don't have to
Do it alone. Cha cha cha. All right, everyone. So I think we've lost a few people, but I hope that you will stick around for our brunch and conversation, our virtual brunch. And so all you need to do is when Sarah sends you an invitation to what's called a breakout room, you just accept the invitation and you'll find yourself in a room with a couple of other folks, and you'll have a chance to say hello and share how you're doing in this very strange time of ours. So it's really been a pleasure to be with you all. After our breakout rooms, you'll be sent back into this main room, and then we can say farewell for now.